I fire shots back at haters and explain why you should learn it in spite of them. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of web development. I'm Sean, and today I'm going to tell you how to choose a programming language that will serve you throughout the 2020s. Now, if you're new to web development or programming and you're trying to decide which language you should learn, and you Google it and click on this, you're probably going to say to yourself, well, this is ridiculous. How the am I supposed to know which one of these to pick? The good news is you can ignore most of the garbage on this list. I'm going to tell you about some of the most popular programming languages. These are programming, scripting, and markup languages, to be more precise. HTML, for example, is not a programming language, it's a markup language. But if you're a total beginner, I'm not going to overwhelm you with explaining the difference between this stuff right now. Just think of this graph as the most popular technologies web developers use. And by the way, this image came from an article I was reading by Darius Kavaliauskas. I hope I'm saying that right. Anyway, he wrote this particular article last August, and there's a whole bunch of articles that I used to research this subject. You can see the links to all of them down below if you're interested. So let's talk about a few of the technologies on this list, starting at the top with JavaScript. JavaScript is the front-end programming language used for most modern web pages. Front-end just means the code that creates what users see in their browsers, as opposed to all the other crazy stuff that goes on behind the scenes. You typically use JavaScript in combination with HTML and CSS to make web pages interactive. Now, JavaScript has a wide variety of other uses and a wide variety of libraries and frameworks. And if you're not familiar with these terms, libraries and frameworks are things within a language that help you simplify common tasks. JavaScript has hugely popular libraries and frameworks. Now, what plain old JavaScript does is adds interactivity to a website. So when you're on a website and you click on a navigation bar or a menu and you see other content drop down, that's typically JavaScript doing that. JavaScript is the most popular front-end programming languages for websites, and it's not going anywhere. It's currently used in about 95% of websites in combination with HTML and CSS, like I mentioned. Now, HTML and CSS, if you don't know, are the two main languages used to build what a user sees in their browser on a web page. HTML structures the elements of a web page, and CSS gives style to those elements. And by the way, if you're interested, I've got full explainer videos on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and a couple other languages I'm going to mention in a previous series I did on how to build a website from scratch. So HTML and CSS lay out and style your web page, and JavaScript adds interactivity to it. And once you've learned these three languages, you can consider yourself a proficient front-end developer, which is a developer who writes the code that creates what users see in their browser when they go to a website. There's also back-end developers or back-end code that does things that users don't see in their browser, but as a front-end developer, you wouldn't necessarily need to know how to write back-end code. And a quick point, just so you can get more familiar with the terms in the web development or the dev community, front end can also be called client side, and back end can also be called server side. So back to this list. SQL or SQL. SQL is a database language that's often used on the back end of websites and a lot of other different things, but we're not going to get into that right now. Then you got Python. This is a biggie. Python is a general purpose programming language with a wide variety of uses, from back-end web development, building apps, parsing data, mathematics. Python can probably do your laundry and clean your dishes if you learn how to write good code with it. For those of you who don't like my stupid joke, when you really get to thinking about it, if you think about artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, it's not that hard to imagine somebody writing a Python program that tells an AI robot to clean up your dishes or do your laundry. My coding skills, personally, are not at that level yet, but I have high hopes for you. Also, data scientist. Sexiest career of 2020, according to everybody. We said chicks did coders, and we weren't kidding. Python is great for data science. Learn to write that code that makes you sexy, that brings in all the beautiful ladies or the handsome men, because dudes dig girl coders too. Fellas, can you imagine how sexy it would be if your ladies wanted to spend some quality time with you in a text editor? Maybe game for a little while when you both need a break from coding? Come on! Is there like a Tinder for Nerds app? Someone go build it if there isn't yet. Anyway, more on Python. Python is used on the back end on sites like Google, YouTube, Instagram. Have you heard of any of these? They use Python's Django framework. Python is easy to learn and use. It reads almost like plain English compared to a lot of other programming languages. It's great for scalable apps, and it's growing more and more every year. It's also great for artificial intelligence or AI, machine learning, API integration. API stands for Application Programming Interface. Not going to go into the details right now, but the point is Python can do almost anything. It is the Swiss Army knife of programming languages. So let's stop right here for a second. If you're a beginner watching this and you know you want to get into web development, but you're not sure exactly what you want to do yet, but you want to get started with something, then pick Python or JavaScript. And you'll want to learn HTML and CSS either way, but HTML and CSS are relatively easy to learn comparatively, and you're not going to take as long to master those as you would with most programming languages. In terms of programming languages, if you want to get into web development but don't know where to start, pick Python or JavaScript. All of the articles I read when researching this speculate on what are going to be the most popular in-demand programming languages in the future, and they all have JavaScript and Python. If not numbers 1 and 2 in some order, they're always both in the top 4 or 5. No matter what, no matter who, no matter how they are ranking these languages, everybody, from the CTOs to the senior level programmers to the entry-level web developers to the friggin' Instagram models. Okay, maybe not them. Everybody who's anybody in web development is ranking both JavaScript and Python in their top 5 languages to learn. No other languages are like that. Not Java, not PHP, not C or C# or C++, none of the cool kid languages like Go or Rust or Kotlin or whatever. And don't get me wrong, all of these languages are very good in their own right, but they are not unanimously viewed as top languages by all the experts the way Python and JavaScript are. Now, as far as which one to choose between the two, if you have at least a general idea that you want to do something with building websites and front-end development for websites, which again is what the user of a website sees in their browser, then you should pick JavaScript. If you think, on the other hand, that you might want to do something either working with back-end programming or working with databases, then you should probably pick Python. Now, interestingly enough, you can write back-end code with JavaScript these days using Node.js, but that's another topic for another day. The point is, JavaScript and Python are the two overwhelmingly popular languages that are not going anywhere anytime soon. They're only going to keep growing more and more, adding new and useful frameworks. So if you learn one of those two, Python or JavaScript, and you learn it well, you will be a successful web developer. Now, coming up soon, I'm going to be doing some other videos on what are the best programming languages for the specific subfields of web development, for mobile app development, for web app development, for working with databases, for AI, etc., etc. And within those, I might mention some other languages that are better than Python or JavaScript, respectively, for those specific fields. But overall, if you're a beginner, web development in general, if you're not sure what to do with it yet, pick Python or JavaScript. All right, now I'm going to talk about a few other languages as well, but if you've gotten what you need out of the video and you feel like you don't need to hear about all these other languages, feel free to drop off. Just be sure to drop one of these down below if the video has been useful to you. So let's talk about a few other languages, starting with PHP. PHP is a server-side scripting language. It's a back-end programming language used on around 80% of modern websites. When you fill out a form on a website, for example, and then hit the submit button, usually PHP is working on the back end to retrieve the data or to give you a response based on the information you entered into that form. And that's just one example of PHP at work. Now, a lot of computer scientists and the cool kids on the software development block talk about PHP. They say it's an old, outdated language that a lot of mediocre developers have used to write sloppy code throughout the years, and that you should get with the times and pick a more modern language, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is that PHP is easy to learn and super useful if you want to build websites, because you can just embed it right into your HTML. And you can also use modern PHP frameworks like Laravel to clean up your code a bit and shut up the PHP haters. I've got a whole video where I fire shots back at the PHP haters and explain why you should learn it in spite of them. See How to Build a Website from Scratch, episode 9. I love PHP. It's still used on the back end in 80% of modern websites, like I mentioned, and WordPress is built on it. And if you've already learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you add PHP and you can now consider yourself a full stack developer, which is a developer who writes the code that ends up being what the users see on their screens, along with the complex nitty-gritty stuff that goes on behind the scenes. There are tons of PHP jobs available, and they are not going anywhere anytime soon. PHP can also be great if you want to be a freelance developer as well, because freelance developers work with a lot of small businesses, and small businesses often host their sites on WordPress, which is built on PHP, or they have simple sites that use PHP on the back end, just like tomorrows-campus.com, link below. PHP is also used occasionally in the corporate world, but more often you'll find Java as the language that's used for large organizations. Almost 90% of Fortune 500 firms use Java for their desktop apps and their back-end development projects, according to one of those articles down in the description. So if you want to be a developer for a large organization building desktop apps and writing corporate software, Java's a good option for you. You also see on here C#. It's called C#. It looks like a C with the pound sign after it. Anyway, C#, C++, these are from the C family of programming languages, and these are all general purpose programming languages, sort of like Java and Python. Now, most of these general purpose programming languages came about in the 1990s in the diaper days of web development and have remained popular ever since. However, some of them are now being replaced with newer, faster, easier to use languages. In 2009, Google came out with a new language called Go, or Golang. Go is designed for quote-unquote large distributed systems, highly scalable network servers, cloud infrastructure, serverless ecosystems, blah, 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 blah. I'm just quoting the general information that you read about it, right? Go is the fastest growing language on GitHub, and it's meant to replace languages like Java and C++. Then after Go, along came some other new programming languages like Kotlin, Rust, TypeScript, and Swift, which might be better than the traditional languages like Java and the C family, and maybe even better than Python and JavaScript supposedly, because they can work better with new hardware and because they're just faster and easier to use. Now, a lot of these new languages are said to be more developer friendly. As you can see, there's a couple of them on this most loved programming languages list, but oh look, there's Python coming in second place anyway. So don't let these new trends fool you into thinking that some of these traditional old languages are going to become obsolete, because they are not all going to become obsolete, especially not Python and JavaScript. Now you got Swift on here. Swift is used to build iOS and Mac OS apps, pretty much all Apple operating system apps. Swift was introduced in 2014, and since then it has effectively replaced Objective-C, which was the language previously used for Apple development. You also see Kotlin on here. Kotlin's a language that came about in 2011, and it has now become the preferred language for Android developers. Android development was typically based on Java. You see Rust at number 1 on the loved languages list. Rust is a systems programming language. You can use Rust to build a whole bunch of different things. Web servers, mail servers, databases, virtual machines, operating systems, compilers, interpreters, a whole bunch of complex stuff that if you're a beginner still watching this, you're probably like, man, you're confusing the out of me. Well, let me bring things back around and simplify them for you. Pick Python or JavaScript if you're a beginner and you're not exactly sure what you want to do in web development yet. And actually, let me simplify things even further for you by saying that it really doesn't even matter which language you use. Even if you pick the wrong one, a language that you don't end up using that much in the future, just pick one language, because once you learn a programming language, then all the rest of them become so much easier to learn. So just jump in and get started. I only recommend Python and JavaScript in particular because those two are like the consensus top 5 from everybody who's anybody, and no matter what new languages or technologies come around, Python and JavaScript aren't going anywhere anytime soon. They're like the J-Lo and Shakira of programming languages. It doesn't matter what hot new stars come up onto the scene, they're still the ones performing at the Super Bowl. So if you're a beginner who doesn't know what programming language to choose, but you want to get started, pick Python or JavaScript and dive in. Drop a thumbs up if you like the video, leave a comment if you like, hit that subscribe button to get notified when the next video comes out, and click the link below to tomorrows-campus.com. We've got over 1,000 web development courses that you can choose from. And if you want to get started right now with Python or JavaScript, beginner level, just go in there, put in either Python or JavaScript, whichever one you want, single course, beginner, free, and at least 5 or 10 free beginner level Python or JavaScript courses are going to pop up for you. You can get started right now. So get out there and start coding and code until you get carpal tunnel in all of your fingers. Peace out.